Hi, it's Derek here. It's talking with famous people, and I want to talk a little bit about my dinner that I just got back from not a super long time ago. I went to Marie Callender's with my ex-wife Candice, who believes herself to be an ENFJ. I discovered that she's uh, continued researching and stuff on her own, and disagrees with my assessment of her as an ESFJ. So, maybe she's probably more right about her than I am. So the thing is, if she's ENFJ, she would be NI, which does make more sense than NE. So maybe she is. I don't know. Regardless, that's not really exactly what I want to talk about. Is that part of it? I want to talk about the phenomena of life coaching, of marriage, of post-marriage dealing with stuff, and of the hard realities of a life in which sacrifices are made for good reasons and to good ends, but are nevertheless sacrifices. And we give up stuff, And I think Candice and I both miss the same thing when we think to miss things. We miss the having a partner, someone to report to, someone to check in on. My meeting with her this evening, which was not a meeting, it was just let's have dinner and catch up a little bit. We haven't seen each other in a long time. We haven't sat down and talked in a long time. Part of the reason is there's still some resentment there on both sides, for sure. And one of the things that happened tonight is at the end of the dinner, when we got back to the house, she read me this letter that she wrote me. She basically expressed all of her things she was angry at me about. And in particular, one thing, which is something, a little bit of a point of dispute between us as to significance of it. But, I feel bad. I feel guilty. Her letter was effective insofar as it made me feel guilty a little bit about shit that went down during the marriage. It wasn't, people are going to think there's some infidelity or something like that. There was no infidelity. Okay? That's not what I'm talking about. There was a certain point on my end, probably too much closeness emotionally with somebody that I was in the trenches with, at work. And that wounded her dramatically. More so than, at the time, this is the thing. It's such a complicated reality, and it's hard for me to feel super guilty about anything, given that I never touched anybody, and I never was going to, I never attempted to. In fact, went out of my way to not even, to barely handshake, maybe. So, in each of our lives, we go through our life and we meet a variety of different people. And we have a variety of different kinds of relationships. Some of those relationships may push some boundaries in terms of what's wise or safe or ethically beyond reproach, right? What I did was not remotely ethically beyond reproach, although it wasn't particularly bad. It was just, I don't think it was particularly bad. Candice, my ex-wife, feels as though I became too close, and I don't dispute that I became too close, but we disagree fundamentally on what that means. to me, it's like, oh, well, you see, in this instance, we are absolutely right to be concerned that I'm displaying there some behaviors that are not consistent with a married man trying to preserve his marriage. Okay, fine. But, I mean, we have to contextualize things. So, keeping in mind that I never cheated on her at all, and that what we're talking about is, like, I sent this work woman an email at one point saying, I'll protect you. Candice didn't like that. Candice, of course, had access to all my stuff. I didn't have any private stuff. I didn't want any private stuff. She was welcome to read all my emails. I don't care. I'm trying to hide anything. I mean, the woman in question seemed like somebody that I might pursue if my marriage didn't work out. And, you know, I should never have indicated that out loud. But at that point, it's important to contextualize again. I was, at that moment, just out of a serious war on two fronts. One, with the actual enemy, and then two, with my core inner circle people who all thought I was wrong and who all thought that I was crazy and who all believed that I needed to be controlled and shut down. You know, in that comment, in that context, I mean, my ex-wife and I were having all sorts of difficulties. We couldn't talk to each other at all. Just seeing me would cause her to become angry about something. This is well before anything else happened, right? She found my presence intolerable. It was abundantly clear, and I told her this on multiple occasions. You know, it's obvious to me that you find my presence intolerable. And she'd say, "No, I don't. I love you." I say, well, you know, this is before any sort of before the conversation that constitutes some horrible breach of trust. I'm not denying that it constitutes some breach of trust, but keeping in mind that I could not cross within 15 feet of my wife without her starting a fight. And that's the simple reality. And this is true before the conversation. You know, my ex-wife likes to talk about a lot of benchmarks of like, well, see, it's because this happened. And of course, her behavior persists across it all. And though she wants to explain it through the lens of what I did wrong, it's a habit she built up over the course of 10, 13 years together or whatever, of framing things through that lens of Candice is unhappy, let's find out what Eric did wrong this time. And it was a lens that worked well for her for a long time, but you know, it unfortunately, once I got sober, she needed to change lenses. So, you know, I did all the sacrifices through the marriage, right? I quit this for her so she wouldn't leave, or I did that for her so she wouldn't leave, or I did this for her so she wouldn't leave. And I always said, I will never leave you. I'll never, ever, ever leave you. Of course not. You don't have to worry about that. I'm solid. You're the one who's iffy. I understand, but I'm solid. Don't worry. Well, at one point in that spring, she asked me, like, what's going on with us? And I said, I think it's reasonable to think this marriage may end up actually having an expiration date, Candice. And that is what actually is the cause of her um, basically determined marriage destruction efforts. So it's like at that point forward, she, not without really knowing what she was doing, she went through the motions of fighting for the marriage while actually, in reality, fighting against the marriage the whole time. It doesn't matter. That's all fine because we need to get out of that marriage, right? Both of us did. I know I sure as hell did. And I suspect she did too, although she seems a little less super happy with the decision than I am happy with the change. I'm super happy with the change. Not because anything wrong with Candice, but just because she's just too much about dictating what other people do, and I just can't have that. I mean, I need to. I'd be happy to include her in my games. I'd be happy to play with her on her shit, as long as she lets me do it my way, my part of the playing my way. I threw every possible option in the world at this woman, and she just, at the end of the day, she just doesn't like me, and that's fine. She doesn't have to like me. She was a good wife, an excellent wife for a long time. I was an excellent husband, though she seems to always forget that part. I was drunk for a while, so we're looking at, like, the way I say it is, we basically have a ledger sheet that has the first 10 years or so. She gets credit for being the one who was right, and I was in the wrong, right? And then the last couple of years, it's reversed, and so I was right about everything, she was wrong about everything. So, do those balance each other out? Yeah, more or less. And she probably would take exception with the notion that in the last couple of years things were the other way around, because she's found a couple of key pieces of data that she can frame in ways that, I guess, maximize the significance of it or something. Regardless, I mean, that doesn't. We can agree to disagree, and she can interpret things however she wants, but it doesn't change the reality of the situation, which is, when I quit drinking, she had to come to terms with the fact that she no longer had a cooperative controllee. And really, that's how she wants to, she's not awful about it or anything. She just wants things the way she wants things. She wants her nest the way she wants, and she wants her male bird to fly the way the male bird she wants to fly, and she wants him to, cluck the way she wants him to cluck, and all that stuff. And I'm just not going to be that guy. Never will, never would, never possibly could, unless I drink myself into absolute submission. So it was kind of doomed at that point. And I tend to be a little bit like, I am not bitter at all about it until I hear her talking about it, and I realize that fundamentally she still doesn't understand what happened. She thinks it's about that conversation I had with that woman, or it's about how I treated her here, or how I did that there, or whatever. Well, it's not any of those things. You're just not that adaptable, right? And so I don't blame you. I'm just saying, if we have to adjudicate on a moral ground, I definitely have all the moral high ground, but we have no reason to adjudicate on a moral high ground issue. We just say it's not a moral issue, and that Eric did nothing wrong, but Candice just didn't want to be with him anymore, and that's fine. There's no problem with that. When you are framing things, though, as, okay, this is a really healthy way for me to process this emotion, according to my life coach. And the healthy way is for you to write an angry letter in which you explain how everything is the other person's fault, and then read it to them. I am particularly okay with that. I can listen to that in general, and as a matter of course, not a problem. However, that's a terrible piece of advice, because all you're going to do is restart conflict. I would never be talking about this if she hadn't read that goddamn letter. Because she feels as though I betrayed her. And I mean, she's just vigorously ignoring all the shit that she was doing. and my crime of a conversation, this notion that one can sort of emotionally cheat is not accurate. It's not true. It doesn't mean anything. I have lots of close friendships with lots of people. And if it's a woman, I'm emotionally cheating? No, that's the reason we have a clear definition of cheating, right? We've got a nice, clear criterion. This is what cheating is. It's when it involves touching of some sort. It doesn't have to involve intercourse. It could be kissing, whatever. It has to involve some sort of touching. Otherwise, it's not cheating, definitionally. Okay? So, yeah, I had an inappropriate conversation with this woman. Inappropriate, I mean, saying things like, well, if my marriage doesn't work out, and Candice fucking hates me. I mean, she just despises me. So I don't know how much longer. I mean, I'm still fighting for my marriage. I'm not saying let's do anything now at all. I'm just saying, if that doesn't work out, you and I do seem to be a pretty good match. Is that cheating? No, it's not. It's not cheating at all. What it is a rationalist's, as opposed to a feeler's, response to the irrational F-based attack that was being launched by the partner for a long period of time. You just go, well, I guess she hates me, and I'm not looking to replace her right now because I'm still married, but well, gosh, there's a woman right in front of me, and she's awfully nice to me, and she seems to think I'm not crazy, and she's not always telling me always trying to shut me down. She's not withdrawing either. Like, at a certain point, Candice was like, she didn't want to fight me anymore. She didn't want to have to defend her position anymore. Is what it boiled down to. Because I was right and she was wrong, but she kept persisting in the position anyway. So she just bailed. She just went off to her parents' house. I didn't see her for days at a time. And why? Well, you're too crazy, Eric. The main reason I got so crazy in that whole thing is because the people I knew would be for sure on my side and never doubt me when I told them objective facts. And because if they were to doubt me, that would mean they would think I was lying, because I wasn't positioning things as, I predict this is going to do blah blah blah. I was saying, well, here's a piece of factual evidence that proves what I'm saying, and that was just more evidence of my craziness. And I got a bunch of fucking, my best friend was telling me, oh, you couldn't possibly make money enough to live on as a debate coach as your own business, Eric. And this compelled me to say, actually, I'll make more money, a lot more money than I make as an employee. And had to then have explained to me how, in fact, my area of business was not lucrative at all, possibly, and that that I was in no position whatsoever to leave that job, because nobody wants to hire somebody who just got fired, and it's not like you're in a real business. I mean, this is what I was getting as my boss is busily bending me over, right? Trying to goddamn best. And I'm trying to fight this thing on two fronts. On one front at work, trying to win this battle against this very, very sneaky and conniving woman. On the other hand, facing nothing but pushback on every step of the way, at home, at friends, wherever. It's causing me to escalate because, they're not answering on point. They're not listening to my words. to the extent they are, and I say, okay, well then either I am lying or whatever, then they shift ground and try to not answer the question. You can imagine how furious I start getting. Am I getting a little crazy at this point? Yes, I am, because I'm saying things like, oh, I will be able to make as much money, or maybe even some more money than I'm making currently at this job, by quitting, or by getting fired, or whatever. And then hearing, no, you won't. That's not true. And we say, are you saying I'm lying then? And then them going, you're just not going to be able to make that much money. You're not being honest with yourself. Not with me. You're not lying. You're just not being honest with yourself. So I'd say, okay, well, here's some facts, and I start listing like resume stuff, right? That would be impressive, and it didn't make any difference. After I'd present some impressive stuff, they'd say, "See, Eric, you got a problem. You're arrogant." Wait, but you just told me I wouldn't be able to make money, so I'm trying to show you I have a lot of assets to bring to the table to make a lot of money. If that's the only way I can get you to validate my decision, because it's important, you're my inner circle. And I mean, they just thought they knew better. They were convinced of it. Absolutely convinced of it. So much so that my wife divorced me, and my best friend more or less didn't talk to me for a year. But that same best friend the other night said I was wrong about all that stuff to me. And I'm like, that's actually all I need to hear. And I realized that was all I needed to hear, Ron. Ex-wife, she's still dealing with blame perception problems, right? So she has always had this issue where she wants to blame me and not accept or talk about or address her own stuff, right? And she's been a little bit better since we got divorced, and she does admit some things about that year, but she keeps trying to sort of like turn the framework so that this conversation that she keeps referencing is the significant driving force behind the divorce. But it clearly wasn't, because she hated me 6 months before I had that conversation, and made it abundantly clear to me day after day after day after day after day. So much so that I would say to her, "Dear Jesus, man, you really fucking hate me, don't you?" I mean, there was no, and she'd say, "No, I totally love you." Okay, well, you obviously do hate me, because you're acting like you hate me all the time. So that's not a good sign. And she just couldn't. She's not able to see herself by comparing her behavior to a standard that she held as opposed to. And so, we had a lot of fights about what it meant to have your cake and eat it too. And I think she finally sort of understood that at the end, although sort of. I mean, like, I didn't get from her a sense of having learned anything, really. Like, she accepted that she wasn't going to win that argument, because she had no argument, right? I mean, it was just as simple as that. But she didn't learn anything. So I don't know. She's still making the same delusions, like, well, my 6 months of daily hate is not nearly as bad as your one. Actually, I think it was 2 conversations, but I mean, like, equally banal. It's not nearly as bad as your 2 conversations. Yeah, it is. It's much worse, actually. I didn't break any rules. I showed trod too close to some lines for sure. I regret that. And I certainly didn't betray your trust. If I did, then doesn't daily hate rituals against me count as betraying trust too, or no? That doesn't count as betraying? What does that count as? Just hating me? I mean, I don't know. I have no answer. And then when she found out about this conversation, I guess that was the last straw for her, and she's just like, I mean, that's not technically the reason why she wanted to divorce me, was because I brought a fucking notebook into a wedding. That was the last straw, right? I mean, it's not even a straw, that's the point. That's called a normal person doing a normal thing. Like being allowed to carry paper places. Yeah. As for that life coach, it's a terrible idea. I was having a pleasant dinner with her, and okay, she needs to vent and get all the anger and stuff off her chest or whatever. I honestly think this assignment the life coach gave her is just reinforcing delusions. I mean, it's not. If she wants to frame it that way, as somehow my fault, she can try to frame it that way, but she is not helping herself in framing it that way because it's not accurate. So, I mean, I told her many, many times, I said, listen, my primary concern here is that you just haven't really thought it through. You just don't really know what you're doing. You're just not making a good decision. That was my basic position. You're simply not making a good decision, and you can't explain to me why you are. And she never could, because she wouldn't accept this. She wouldn't accept this argument, which would have made perfect sense to me. She wouldn't say, well, because I want a different man. You and I don't work well together. I'd say, well, Candice, look. So, I get it. You want a divorce. Is it because you need to be with somebody else? I mean, it's like, I'm just not meeting your needs. Yeah. And that would have been fine. It would have made perfect sense, at least. But she couldn't accept a worldview in which she was interested in finding somebody else. That would be unacceptable for her to be the one who's divorcing me so that she could go be with somebody else. But that's how it always was going to be. I mean, that was never any doubt that she was going to divorce me to go be with somebody else. The kid was done being raised. I had nothing left to offer her, really. But see, that's a big cognitive dissonance. If she's going to go and just accept the fact that, well, I exhausted the usefulness of that relationship because what I got out of it, the chance to be a mother, and what he got out of it, the need for me to be a mother, were the same, and it coincided well, and we served those needs well. And now it's time for me to move on. She cannot accept an identity of herself that manifests that simple, good, just, and true reality. She needs to frame it so that I did something wrong so that she can justify to herself leaving. She doesn't need to justify it with deflectionary framings. I mean, that's all it is deflectionary framing. There's nothing to deflect. Nobody's blaming you. I'm happy. I'm liberated. You're happy, or at least happier than you were with me. I guarantee you that. Because I bet you don't wake up every morning and make it abundantly clear how unhappy you are to see your spouse. And then make it abundantly clear again later in the day. You don't spend all day, I bet right now, keeping quick look on somebody trying to find things to be mad about, which is what you did with me. So yeah, it was a good choice. Of course it was. But it wasn't motivated by the things in your letter at all. That was not what this was about. That's just make-believe that you're using to, like, I don't know, deflect all blame onto me or something. But that's not the reality. I'm happy to share blame equally with you. Tell your life coach that's a really ill-advised assignment. Reinforcing negative emotions and trying to internalize them? Why would you have your coachee do that? I don't know. But anyway, thanks for watching Talking Sense, people. I've been host Eric. Have a pleasant evening.